Well, if funny enough, I presume that question would have had so much more credibility 10 days ago, having seen what the police and the army can and can't do in KZN and Gauteng. Then I think it slightly becomes a moot point. I saw a hilarious article this week where the president had announced that 25,000 troops were going to be deployed, and then somebody else announced, but we don't have 25,000 active troops to deploy. So I mean, look, but look, that in many ways that's a side issue. The bottom line is that the Civil War is just an argument that people make to try and shut down this debate, because the question that people can't argue with is the democratic will of the people of the Western Cape. What do you want? What do the majority want? Let's do it. So actually, that's the question that has politicians running scared. And because they're running scared on that issue, then you end up in a scenario where they start finding other issues to distract you from the one they don't want to be talking about. And Civil War, of course, is one of these very popular ones that does exactly that. And the reality is with Civil War, Civil War between who? At the end of the day, the independence movement is entirely peaceful. We don't have an armed wing. We're not a terrorist organization. We have no intention of getting into an armed conflict with South Africa. So who would the Civil War be between? Do we think the ANC is going to roll tanks into the Western Cape to undo a democratic referendum in the Western Cape? I don't think so. I think the world would be an absolute betrayal of everything they've ever stood for, and actually they would become the pariahs of the world. And actually, all they'd do is they'd make Cape independence an absolute certainty. Although perhaps they'd delay it 6 months or 12 months by their obstinance.
Yeah, I think the problem is a lot of people have this sort of mindset, okay, if you have independence, you have to grab your rifle and run into the streets. But I mean, if everyone just stops listening to what the government says and just stops paying taxes, there's literally nothing that they can do. I mean, they can't just arrest everyone and throw them in prison. I mean, what can they physically do?
And look, and in fairness to the ANC, look, I really am no fan of the ANC, and but in terms of civil rights, they've been pretty good. At the end of here we are having a conversation about Cape Independence. This is the umpteenth conversation I've had. We run an organisation. We've got websites. We've addressed the press club. We've run polls. We've marched on the streets. At no point has the ANC tried to stop us, tried to shut us down. They have played by the rules of the game. So let's look at what are the current independence movements. Let's look at Scottish independence. There's no civil war. There are just people arguing for their various perspective points. Ultimately, then there was a referendum. Now people want a second referendum. Whether they'll get it, I don't know. And actually, that was negotiated sensibly by grown-ups and adults. And I would love to think that we would get something similar in South Africa. I suspect it won't go quite as easily as that. But I also really don't see tanks rolling through the streets of Cape Town to crush the democratic will of the Western Cape people. I think people are threatening or talking about a civil war for their own personal gains. They want to scare people into not supporting Cape independence.